Hello all, we're going to look at this longitudinal 20 marker. So you will have done longitudinal in the lesson with me and looked at longitudinal 5, but we're going to apply it now to this 20 marker. So the first thing we always do with a 20 marker is we do our pervert structure: practical, ethical, reliability, validity, examples, rep and gen, theory, with the definition. So we see longitudinal. Take a nice deep breath because it's a really hard 20 marker. We write pervert down our page, which is practical, ethical, reliability, validity, examples, rep and gen, and theory. The first thing we do, as always, with a 20 marker is we do the definition. So our definition: longitudinal study. Just check the term of the question. Using material from the item and elsewhere explain the strengths and weaknesses of longitudinal studies. Longitudinal studies take place over a long period of time, 2 years. Longitudinal studies take place over a long period of time and are revisited at regular intervals. That's the definition we want: carried out over a long period of time that revisited at regular intervals. So, theory. Well, longitudinal studies can be qualitative or quantitative. So, if the longitudinal study uses quantitative methods, so that are expressed in numerical or statistical form. So if the longitudinal study uses quantitative methods that are expressed in numerical or statistical form, it is favoured by positivists, as it will enable them to establish key patterns and trends. If it can be both, I just say, well, if a longitudinal study uses quantitative methods, again, we bracket it, that's expressed in numerical statistical form, it's favoured by positivists, as it will enable them to establish key patterns and trends and take a macro or large-scale approach. Okay. I'm putting it on the weaknesses side, but all I really want to say actually though is if the longitudinal studies or the longitudinal study uses qualitative methods that are expressed in words or text, it is favoured by interpretivism, as it enables them to understand individuals meanings and motives and take a micro or small scale approach. Well, if the longitudinal study is qualitative, and remember they can be both, then that would be favoured by interpretivism, as it enables them to understand individuals' meanings and motives and take a micro or small scale approach. That's theory done. That's all paragraph 1. Basically, favoured by both, so I discuss both of them. Paragraph 1. Practical issues is time, money or cost, and access. Could you access a group? So, the major weaknesses is that longitudinal studies are time consuming. Longitudinal studies are incredibly time consuming. For example, Bunsel's study took 2 years to complete. Longitudinal studies are really time consuming. For example, Bunsel's study took 2 years to complete. We've got a tiny little reference to a study there. And there's a cost. Let's be dramatic. There's a huge cost with travel. There's also a huge cost with travel. So, Zade conducted interviews or conducted research in respondents' own homes. Zade conducted research in the respondents' own homes over a long period of time. She conducted research in respondents' own homes over a long period of time. This addressed practical problems. As respondents' children were between the ages of 4 to 9. Zade conducted research in the respondents' own home. I'm not going to mention they did interviews. I'm going to say she did the research in their own homes over a long period of time. And this addressed practical problems as the respondents' children were between the ages of 4 to 9. It meant she gained access to single mothers by choice. So she gained access to these single mothers by choice, as there's no need to organise childcare. She gained access to these single mothers by choice, so there was no need to organise childcare, and they felt more comfortable, increasing the validity. And they will have felt more comfortable, increasing the validity or truthfulness. Already said there's a weakness in the cost of travel. Time's done, so time consuming, money and cost, and I'd argue I've discussed accessing. Examples. So Bunsel's study took 2 years to complete. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. Time, money, access is done. Ethical. You say that's paragraph 2 all done. Paragraph 3 is ethical. So, keep needs coming back to the question. Longitudinal studies adhere to the British Sociological Association's guidelines. longitudinal studies adhere to the British Sociological Association's guidelines. For example, in Colossi's study, she uses pseudonyms. Let's get the right spelling, folks. Pseudonyms of Kate and gives confidentiality, so a UK club, so personal details are kept private. This protects respondents from harm, and it increases the validity. And it increases the validity and truthfulness, as respondents know their identities are kept hidden. This protects respondents from any harm, and it increases the validity, as respondents know their identities are kept hidden. They'll give more truthful answers. So, of course, they adhere to ethical issues in the British Sociological Association's guidelines. However, in longitudinal, as with all studies to be honest, but with the longitudinal, respondents are given the right to withdraw. Everyone has to give them the right to withdraw. Respondents are given the right to withdraw. This decreases the sample size or group. This decreases the sample size or group, and therefore decreases the representativeness to account for class, gender, and ethnicity, and therefore can't generalize or apply results. So, however, in longitudinal studies, respondents are given the right to withdraw, so letting them leave. So this decreases the sample size or group, and therefore it decreases the representativeness, the ability to account for class, gender, and ethnicity, and therefore we can't generalize or apply results because we let them all leave. Reliability. That's paragraph 3, ethical. Reliability. So, if the longitudinal study, again, is quantitative, numerical, if the longitudinal study is quantitative numerical with closed questions, it's more reliable, as respondents have to approximate their answers and are likely to give the same or similar answers again. If the longitudinal study is quantitative and it's got closed questions, it's going to be more reliable, as respondents have to approximate their answers and are likely to give the same or similar answers again. So, not really a paragraph for that one. The other thing actually, I'd say another strength of longitudinal, I might come back to that in another paragraph actually. Ignore me. Reliability is done. Paragraph 4 is reliability, and that's all done. So, validity. Similarly, if the longitudinal study generates qualitative data, so in words or text, with open questions, respondents don't approximate. If there's open questions where respondents don't approximate, they can fully explore the topic in their own words. It increases the validity. It's more truthful. It's longitudinal and it's got open questions. They can fully explore the topic in their own words. They don't approximate, and that increases the validity. If the researcher and respondent build a rapport or relationship, if the researcher and respondent build a rapport or a relationship, respondents feel more comfortable and are likely to give truthful or more accurate answers, again increasing the validity. Given the research is carried out over a long period of time, well, given that the research is carried out over a long period of time, the researcher can establish Verstehen or deep understanding. Given it's carried out over a really long period of time, the researcher can establish deep understanding or Verstehen. For example, in Bunsel's study, they provide highly detailed or highly intimate and sensitive information about their personal relationships and experiencing sexual harassment. This is because they've clearly built a trusting relationship. So I know I've already touched on Bunsel by saying 2 years, but it didn't feel long enough. So I've added it in there as well because she must have built that Verstehen in order to truly understand them. Okay, that is paragraph 5. There isn't a paragraph for examples. We have to do 2 studies. I've given them colossi and pseudonyms. I've given them Rosenil. No, I haven't. I've given them Zade, the single mothers by choice in their own homes. And I've given them Bunsel. We only have to give them 2, but I'm showing you how consistently I will always try and put colossi in with ethics, Zade in with their own homes, and Bunsel in with either 2 years or validity and Verstehen there. Okay, I haven't got the item yet though. Now, in the item, remember, if they ever use a number, it's hinting at rep and gen and sample size. So they have findings from a longitudinal study of 40,000 UK households called Understanding Society were first published in 2012. The study began in 2009 and will continue over a number of years. Over 100,000 people are being studied to look at how a changing society is affecting the choices that people make about their lives. So they've mentioned a number now twice. A variety of methods is used for data collection on health and well-being. It's become apparent that the way that information is gathered can affect the results produced. So, given it's got really large samples, that's what I'm going to put in the rep and gen paragraph. So, rep and gen. In the item, how we always show those marks, we can see that the longitudinal study, is accessing a sample size of 100,000. Yes, respondents. This is more representative, as samples this large can account for differences in gender, ethnicity, and social class. Samples that large means that it's more representative. Samples, the size of the respondents. This means respondents. This means the method is likely to be quick to complete. So this means the method is likely, to have closed questions. So if there's that many people, it's likely to have closed questions that are quick to complete. Increasing the sample size or group. We've got closed questions likely, they're quick to complete, and this increases the sample size or group. This means it's more representative, as samples this large can account for differences in gender, ethnicity, social class. And so the researchers can generalize or apply results. However, longitudinal studies have an issue with sample attribution, as subjects drop out over time. They have an issue with sample attribution as subjects drop out over time. This decreases the sample size and therefore decreases the representativeness and ability to generalize or apply results. It decreases the sample size or ability to generalize or apply results. Last thing I probably would just note is maybe back in theory, takes place over a long period of time, revisits at regular intervals, but we can establish changes over time. And it offers more than a snapshot. Just think it could have done with a little bit more there. So it also can establish changes over time and offers a little bit more than a snapshot. So that's how I would structure this 20 marker. It looks really, really difficult to begin with, but the purpose of this is obviously you've done longitudinal in the lesson. I've shown you longitudinal as a 5 marker and we've structured it together. And this just means you get revision over longitudinal again within the same week. And I'm applying it to a question that looks really, really difficult, but to show you that you could totally do this really, really successfully. So thank you very much, folks. Any questions, just let me know.